Have you been fined? Have you received mail, unidentified mail, you've got no idea who it's from, and you accidentally opened it? Turns out it's a fraudulent fine sent from some fictitious entity you don't feel like you should have to pay? Well, I'm with you. I agree with you, and I'm here to help you. Here, we understand that if you open unidentified mail, you have in fact agreed to its contents. Now, you have two options. You have option one, pay it, which, if you've got Hell Skrilla, go right ahead. Happy, be my guest. The other option is to fight it. And the only way you can fight it is by disputing it. Now, their only option is to request to go to court. As daunting as that may seem, that is the procedure that must be taken if you wish to not pay these fines. Now, to preface why we're going to do this, we have to understand this illusion of authority that they've given themselves. Now, when you receive said unidentified mail, you will notice a standard DL size envelope with a name written in all capital letters. I'm here to tell you that that name is not you. Do you write your name in all capital letters? I don't think so, unless you're a fucking government employee. Now, these fines, these bills that you receive in the mail, they've been addressed to what's called a trust, an all caps name. Now, under ASIC guidelines, we will note that an all capitalized version of a name is a corporation. With this new knowledge, we can begin understanding what these bills, fines, and notes, promissory notes, are doing and how to remit them or discharge them. Now, these bills, they're not addressed to you. They are not fining you, the living, breathing man. They are billing a trust that was set up through your birth certificate. They are accusing a trust of driving a vehicle, which is a fine if you use a license to do commerce on that road, like a truckie, taxi, Uber, or bus driver, for example. However, a living man or woman like you or I travels. We don't drive. You only drive if you're doing commerce. You only drive if you're making a profit or a gain. When you drive your vehicle, when you travel in your personal form of conveyance, are you making a profit or a gain? No. With this new knowledge, I continue on. Now, what's being done here is, although you were a living man traveling in his own personal form of conveyance, the trust is being accused of driving. The presumption is in law that the trust was driving a vehicle. Now, we all know that a trust cannot drive. It has to be a living man or woman in that car. So what we are doing is changing the name from that all caps name to the name of the living man or woman. It is no difference to when a company's vehicle has been booked or fined by, say, a speed camera, for example. Instead of the company, Telstra, Optus, whatever, paying that fine, we are deciding to ask to go to court before we are summoned. Now, what the court sends you is what is called a statutory declaration. And what we do here is we are changing from a trust name and we are nominating the living man or woman as the operator of that vehicle. Now, this may be news to you, but the court system that we all know and are familiar with does not run and operate as you have previously thought or as you have been led to believe. The courts that are used throughout this nation are not common law courts. Common law courts are for hearing men and women. These courts are what is known as Admiralty Maritime Law Courts. These courts are courts of commerce, corporate contracts, and deal in commercial disputes and issues. These courts cannot deal with a living man or woman that hasn't committed a crime. These courts can only deal in names and trusts, to be precise, corporate entities, dead entities, non-living entities, fictitious entities. They can only deal in your straw man, your legal fiction, your legal personhood. Go and Google all those names I just said. So, with this knowledge, we know that these courts cannot try a living man or woman. They cannot even deal with a living man or woman that hasn't committed a crime. These courts that we have all given supreme authority to rule over us and dictate our lives can't even deal with a living, breathing man or woman. Go figure that out. Now, the reason that this step must be taken is for us, as they have made this fine a crime. The reason this step must be taken, electing to go to court before we are summoned, is essential. Now, we all know what a crime is, right? Do no harm, cause no loss or injury to another living man or woman. It's very simple. Even a child knows right from wrong. Could we not agree? So we know that, for example, parking over 5 minutes in an allotted space is not a crime. You haven't injured, hurt, or caused any loss to anyone. For them to get their facts straight, they must change their fine that is now made a crime after the second notice has been received from the ID of a legal fiction, and they must make it into the ID of a living man or woman, as it was the living man or woman that was operating that day, not the fiction. So when we send this notice, there is no case to be heard because there is no crime, and they can't deal with a living, breathing man or woman. When you are able to correct your status, standing, and jurisdiction, they must get their own paperwork corrected before they can make any substantiary claim. In our stat deck, we are nominating the driver in red pen, signifying that he is a living man. We then cite the offences against the Commonwealth. And I quote, the Crimes Act, 1914, Section 75, the Crimes Act, 1958, Section 316, and the Acts Interpretation Act, 1984, Section 76A. This is all that must be done. This is how you discharge all these unlawful debts that are being leaned against the living man or woman. You can have debts leaned against you when you're operating as a trust, when you live and breathe and live your life from the day you are born to the day you die. When you live your life identifying as a name, as a word written on a piece of paper, when you identify as a sound that comes out of your mouth, you are essentially giving up your rights and freedoms of a sovereign national on this land called the Commonwealth of Australia. You are giving up those rights and freedoms to be controlled by privileges and responsibilities operating on the all caps Australia. It's not even a land. You're identifying as part of a fictitious entity. By operating and identifying as a fictitious entity yourself, you open yourself up to a plethora of legal repercussions just by saying a few words, just by responding to a few questions by a police officer like, do you understand? No, I don't understand. I don't understand, and I don't consent to contract or joinder with your BS corporation. Go take this shit somewhere else and try it on with someone who doesn't know who they are. I'm a living, breathing man, and you are too. The sooner that you realize this, accept it, and start using this spiritual knowledge and understanding of who you are, the sooner we can take our country back from these pork chops that have exerting their unlawful authority over everyday Australians. This is a spiritual war that will be won with the mind and the pen, and I empower you to do it yourself. Follow along for more.